Welcome back, folks. Today we're having another crack at this rear quarter panel on the Thunderbird, which, as you can see, is not quite the right length. Now, if you were with us last time we worked on this car, you'll remember us saying that this panel is not quite the right shape. It's a little bit too long at the rear top corner, and if we try to correct that by cutting the top down and sort of using this shrinking that it does as you come down the panel, it ends up being too short vertically. It doesn't actually reach down far enough once we cut it down enough at the back there. So we're going to try and massage it into shape. To be honest, we're not super confident this is actually going to work. It might just end up a horrible mangled mess. But given that new panels are all the way over in America, which we're not, it's kind of a faff to get new ones. So we're going to give it a punt. If it works out, happy days. If it doesn't, no harm, no foul. We're going to have to get a new one anyway. So we're going to start tacking this up in place. We've painted underneath to try and protect the inner panel a little bit. It was quite corroded underneath, so we've hit it with some rust killer, put in a whole load of new filler plates, as you've seen in the previous episode, link in the doobly-doob or up in the corner or something. Aid'll figure it out, and you can go check out how that went. And now we're going to try sealing it in. So we're going to use our little panel clips from last time. These things fit between the two pieces of metal that we're securing. So they've got a little bar in the back of them. I'll be honest, I can't actually remember how to put them in. I might need a hand off of Aid to make this work, but very roughly, you put the clip in through between the two panels, and then the little bar on the back gets tightened in on this clamp and it holds everything in place, and it keeps you that gap between the panels that you need for welding. So I now have to figure out how to get that bar in between the two without slicing my arm off on the bottom.
Friction.
Well, I'm not sure how well this is going to generalize to other clips, but for the ones that we've got here, we found when we're trying to use them in a kind of blind hole like this, if we attach them to the top panel and just kind of preload them just right, that they hold themselves in place, the bar on the back and the clamp do kind of pull together. But if you pull the clamp back away a bit more vertical, the gap opens up, and sometimes, if you're really lucky, you can actually just feed in the second panel into that gap. I'm not actually really lucky on this side this time. Your one looks all right though.
Yeah.
So I'm going to loosen this off a bit more and try it again. Because yeah, as I loosen it,
That's it.
Cool. So that's seems to be working. We clamp this up, and in theory, we should be fairly well secure. Oh, hang on. I was positioned wrong on the back edge, sorry. Here we go.
You good?
I believe so. Cool. Yeah, that looks pretty good down this front edge. Now, ideally, you want a lot more clips in this in place so that you can do spot welds all the way along the panel and then take them all off in one go. But because we were only able to get 2 in just because of how much access we had, we're going to cheat a little bit. We're going to start at the front of the panel here, put a spot weld in, and then we're going to creep the clip back to align the panels. Because in the middle here, I'm not sure if it shows up on the camera, but in the middle, the lower panel that we're attaching has kind of hung quite far in underneath the body of the car. So we're going to move that clip along as we go, and hopefully that'll keep everything fairly well aligned. Before we can start beating that round too much, we do need to make sure the rest of the panel's held pretty well in place. And you can see we've welded across the top here. We've got a whole bunch of nice sort of spot welds that are holding the top edge in place. We've also drilled a bunch of holes underneath that we're going to use to plug weld through to the inner wing just on the inside there. So we've got a whole bunch of mole grips across the bottom, just around some of our drilled holes that we've got. And we're going to start welding up through there to hold this in place. And hopefully, once the top edge and the front half of this is pretty good, we can start shaping the back and everything will hopefully hold together pretty well.
So now we're up to working on this corner, and we're going to have to take off a little bit more material at the top to get it to fit underneath the line that we cut into the original bodywork, and we're also going to have to take off some of the inner side of this flange because we don't want to tuck it down and then pinch weld it inside. We can't get into there, there's another skin on the inside, so we're going to have to weld down and join the two panels together right down this seam, which is going to make it look a little bit neater. It is something that people do occasionally to try and smooth the lines out on their cars, so I'm kind of happy to run with that because it makes my life easier. So we're going to trim a little bit off here and just start working this round and shaping it in and just tacking slowly along to make sure we get the curve that we want, and then we'll pinch the bottom in and trim it to the right height, and it should all be good. Shaping that took about half an hour. We just kept on trimming away as you saw and just picking it in as we went around, and it really looks pretty good. It's cooled off now, so we can see there isn't any particular warp in it, although on this corner I don't think we would get it because it's under so much tension and so much stress. I don't think it will actually sort of warp and bubble like we've seen on some of the other projects. There's a little lump under the bottom here where it just dips down ever so slightly, and that's not due to warping, that's just where the underside has had to roll around to join with the bottom of the body on the inside where we attach them all up to, but that's all in now. We've trimmed all of that back, so now we just need to spend a good deal of time going all the way along this seam and just spotting in, keeping it nice and cool because this will warp if we put too much heat into it. Flap all that back, and then we can put some primer on it and call this side completely done, which is a really big win. Well, originally this side of the car looked a lot better. There was just this dent in the bottom, which turns out it wasn't even filled. It's just bent in slightly, and it has a little bit of rust at the bottom where it's fractured off. So that's not too bad, but we can cut that off. This section, we knew there was a big hole here and actually has a massive chunk of body filler in. Someone's just clagged it in to try and make it look as good as possible, and it hasn't. But along the bottom, because the inside is so badly corroded out at the very back of the chassis rail, I thought I'm going to go down and see what it's like. And sure enough, after taking the wire wheel over, it looks really, really bad. There are some fairly sizable holes. So we're going to trim all of the bottom edge off up to this edge and all of the back edge up here. And there's also a hole in the door, which is going to be interesting to deal with because these panels roll around. So we're either going to have to take the front off and leave the edge on, or take the whole edge off, unweld it from the inside and go in that way. But I'm not sure what we're going to do with that, but we'll easily get the material out of this patch panel. Oh. Wow, that's yeah, that's not pleasant. Yeah, that's really nasty. Well, unfortunately, another piece had to come off. This just wasn't salvageable. There was too much rust down the inside across the bottom. This was on like that, and all of this was missing. And it wasn't going to be worthwhile trying to weld something onto this piece and around when we can just make one panel that rolls around the inside of the outside of the chassis leg, because we actually now have 4 layers of metal that we need to replace. There's this inner piece, which is the inside edge of the chassis leg, the inside edge of the sill, and creates a sealed box that goes up against the inside of the sort of chassis rail underneath the car. Then there's another skin, which we think is the supporting layer between the bottom of the jacking point on this side. We can see where it's been bent over. Whether or not it is a jacking point remains to be seen, but we're probably going to have to trim a bit more of this away, and that goes straight up into the inside of the rear quarter where the door card bolts onto. Then there's the outer part of the sill which comes around, and then the body itself. So we have scraped out kilos of rust from inside here. We've had the hoover right the way down to the very front, and we've taken kilos and kilos. This pile on the floor isn't even all of it. There's more in the hoover. So we're going to start and patch up these inner layers and get further and further out. We've coated it all in our acid, so we can hopefully neutralize as much of the rust as possible, because we absolutely can't get rid of it all from inside there. We just need to clean it up as best we can with the acid, wire brush, put some etch primer on it to try and neutralize it as well, get it back, and then just start patching up. And in the meantime, whilst this is drying off, because we have just soaked this in acid, we're going to take off the next part of the rear quarter, because that has a lot of holes in it. Well, a bit more exploratory wire wheeling on the back has shown that from here above we have good solid metal. So I've just measured down 10 centimeters from the apex of this fold line so that we can transfer it onto the patch panel, and I'm just going to slice across. Now this is very definitely worse than the other side. This goes all the way back and the inner panel joins just about here, but obviously the outer panel has tiny little bit of metal, and that's it all the way to the back corner. So just going to slice them both off, get them back to a sensible level, and then start welding these back on. And we might actually get this one done before we get the front one done this time. So that is all the carnage on the back end of this panel done, and hopefully the last of the rot in the arches taken out. We've got these two really quite nice pieces, which I think I'm going to stick on the wall in our live studio, just as a nice piece of art in there. And you'll notice we've left the very front edge on. Now the moulding on our replacement panel doesn't quite match the one from the factory, so if we are going to put the side skirts, the little panels that fit over the rear wheel on, I think leaving this on gives us a much better chance of getting that to fit properly. The other side's going to need a little bit of work, but having this edge also gives us a reference for how far down we need to come on these inner panels. And we're probably going to do this in 2 stages, because there is a little drain in here from the fuel filler door, so any water that gets in there just drains back out and it doesn't rust. I mean, obviously it clearly does rust, but it's a nice idea. So we're going to make this in 2 pieces just to be a little bit easier, and then work out how far we need to go. So to work out where our bottom line is across here, we're going to cut the new panel, put it up, take some measurements, and then make these ones. So hopefully when you see this next, it will be progressed on a little bit further, and hopefully the other end will also look a little bit better as well.
Well, we're not quite finished with the work we want to do. The new panel on the other side is only mostly welded in, and it's not really been like filled and smoothed and everything yet, but it's looking pretty good so far. But with the weather closing in, I thought we'd film this little piece here, just that we've got something to show you guys, just in case it gets really bad. Now this is all welded up in place. It's been smoothed and filled and painted, well, primed rather. It's looking really, really great. The weld line, you can actually see it's a little bit concave there, a little bit convex there, but compared to the state it was in before, this is a massive, massive upgrade. So we're pretty delighted for not being bodywork technicians and all. We're quite chuffed with how this has turned out. So you've thrown some primer on it. Obviously we've learned from working on the kit car that the primer is not completely waterproof. It's not going to protect this for a long time, but we'll be back on this with some proper blue paint in the very near future. We just thought we'd throw this on it for now, just that it's like vaguely water resistant, just for the next couple of days in case the weather turns. And literally as I said that, I started feeling little spits of rain. So we've still got all the gear out, so we're going to start packing up now, which means I'm going to try to lightning my way through this outro. So if you want to help support us with some of our projects here, jump on shop.pedalbox.show, where you can buy some of our swanky merch that I'm, as usual, not wearing. I'm failing to represent as always. You can also jump on patreon.com/pedalboxshow to support us there regularly. Monthly donations, anything from $1 a month upwards. All Patreon backers get some kind of discount at the merch store, proportional to how much you donate. You also get access to the project channels in our Discord server, where we've got quite a few in-progress pictures of this. Obviously, you'll be seeing them quite late if you see this episode, but we've got quite a lot of real-time stuff goes in there as we're digging through the bits of the cars on the days. So jump on there and support us. We really do appreciate every penny, every pound, every dollar we get. All of it goes into the project cars here. I think most of it still goes into the kit car more than the T-Bird and SD1, but it really does go a long way with helping us do more work, spend more time on this stuff, grow the channel, all that good stuff. If you like what you've seen here today, remember to like the video down below. If you don't like anything we've done, if you want to comment on how we can avoid this kind of defamation, please jump in the comments and let us know. As usual, in a few episodes, we have said we don't really know what we're doing. We are kind of playing this by ear as we go along, learning as we go. So we are always grateful to get your input down in the comments. We have actually implemented quite a few bits of advice and information that we've seen down in there. So if you want to help us out, please do. You can also subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. Obviously, one of the main ways you can help us, and ring the bell so you don't miss any future content, because there is plenty more yet to come. We still need to paint this. We still need to do loads and loads of work on the kit car. And hopefully in the near future, I will finally find the energy and the spirit to carry on work on the SD1 again, because I know quite a few people want to see more work on that, and I want to see it back on the road. So I need to find some fight and get back on that. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. We'll see you next time.